This is Believe in Buckeyes. I'm Brian Browning with All-American quarterback Chinny Checo. We got a very special guest, one of our guys that's been with us for. Our first episode together was a while ago, man. We still was young bucks in the game. We're a little bit more mature now, but we're still not on his level. But we have Breer here from inside at Amazon doing NFL there. Also from the Monday Morning Quarterback, senior writer for the NFL for Sports Illustrated. How you doing?
I'm good. I don't know how special a guest I'm going to be, but we'll see.
You're a special guest. You're a special guest. A lot going on with our Buckeyes, man. But we just recently kind of covered Notre Dame and what Ohio State's going through or going to face in this national championship game. And what I took away was, I feel like they're kind of head and shoulders better than Notre Dame, and I'm trying to make sure I keep that player mindset of, not
play with your food, right?
Yeah, but when we look at Notre Dame, the way they approach the game, what do you think their pathway for victory is?
For Notre Dame?
For Notre Dame.
Yeah, I mean, I think Notre Dame plays like and you guys will be able to relate with this, and I think it really reflects well on Marcus Freeman. They play like a Jim Tressel team, like that. That's my first thought. Like when I was at the game in South Bend in 23, 22 was Marcus's first game there. So I don't think it was fully formed yet at that point, but the 23 team with Estime back there, obviously this year with Love back there, and the offensive lines they've always had. It's just a well-disciplined team that makes that wins on the margins, and, again, like I think that's just a great credit to Marcus, and you can really kind of see the lessons that he got, playing for Tress reflected in the way his team plays. It really reflects him, and so I think it's, that's the one thing that sort of scares me about this, like in a way, is that like I remember, I had just gotten out of school in 2002 when Miami and Ohio State played in the Fiesta Bowl, and no one was giving us a chance. And like, I think even most of us thought at that point, like, this is a year early. There's no way this team's going to be able to pull it off. And that team was just so tough, and they were able to make another team play on their terms. And I think that's what Notre Dame's really good at, is like, all right, like if they play a team that's more talented than them, like I think Georgia was, all right, we're going to pull them into a dark alley and see if they can get into a street fight, and see what happens. And so I think that's Notre Dame's path, is to limit the amount of possessions Ohio State has, draw out their own possessions, and I think if you look at the end of the game and you see a bunch of 12, 13, 14 play possessions on both sides, that means Notre Dame's extended plays or extended drives, and that means Ohio State has been forced to earn its way down the field. And, I just covering the NFL. Like I've seen that game plan before, and I've seen that as a talent equalizer. And, it's one thing Belichick's teams did when they weren't as talented as their opponent. It was almost like a bet. It's like, we believe that we can go 12, 13, 14 plays on you without making a mistake. And we bet that when we make you do that, you're going to make a mistake somewhere along the way. I think that's the pathway to victory for Notre Dame is, if you look up at the end of the first half and each team's only had 3 or 4 possessions, the game's been played on Notre Dame's terms. Which, by the way, like that's sort of how the first half played out against Texas, right? I think that's how Texas hung in there against Ohio State too.
Yeah, that's a good point, because obviously Texas. First off, a lot of good points, right? Because comparing Ohio State to that 0-2 game, Ohio State now being like the Miami, we got the NFL guys all over the field. We got so much talent. How could Notre Dame possibly keep up with it? It's a way, right? There is a path forward for them to kind of play a game in their style and obviously come out with a victory. We don't want that to happen. I think I speak for all three of us here that we don't want that to happen. But like you say, that's a great way to kind of equalize talent and then kind of keep the game close, and then you figure out a way to try to win it late. Bring it up to Texas-Ohio State game. Obviously, Texas did a lot of things to really limit Jeremiah Smith. I was in the first 2 playoff games. Jeremiah Smith has been really making it a bigger name for himself, on the national level and making plays all over the field. Texas basically made a point of emphasis that they was going to eliminate Jeremiah Smith, and you're going to have to figure out other guys to kind of beat us and have success on offense. Obviously, we was able to eventually do that, but do you think Notre Dame has the talent? Because we imagine they're going to try to do it, but do you think they have the guys, the talent, and the discipline to kind of go out there and shut down a Jeremiah Smith and force us to look for other ways to play offense?
Well, is it Benjamin Harrison, the corner's name, right?
Benjamin Morrison, but he's out.
Benjamin Morrison.
He's hurt, right? So
he's hurt, right? So, like, do they have a guy who can match up one-on-one?
They have the freshman guy who just I think was named freshman All-American, number 15. I can't remember his name, but he's a pretty. If you look at Notre Dame, they play a lot of man, and they do it as good as anybody I've seen in college football.
Yeah,
but that as being a corner myself, that means only so much when you're going against a guy like Jeremiah Smith. You could play great man, but when Jeremiah Smith shows up, you got to put 2 on him. So
right,
that's the only thing. And the one thing about Notre Dame is they play man, they pressure a lot, they stop the run in that way. And my thought is, okay, how do you double? How you put 2 guys on Jeremiah Smith, similar to what they did last year against Marvin Harrison,
right, and
still be able to send those pressures that they have grown accustomed to doing to shut down the run game? It's hard to do both. You just run out of enough.
The math. It's just simple math.
So I'm interested to see. I assume they're going to take the Texas approach, and the approach that they took last year is not just the Texas approach, but last year they stayed in their base. They play man, but they put 2 on Marvin Harrison. Sometimes they put 2 on Emeka Egbuka, and they relied on those guys up front to stop the run.
To win.
Yeah, I'm interested to see if they take that same approach this year.
Yeah, and I think it's Texas tried to make Ohio State play left-handed, and so making them play left-handed right now is making them go away from Jeremiah Smith, and so I think like you put resources on Jeremiah Smith, and what's Emeka Egbuka going to do? What's Carnell Tate going to do? And I sort of feel like that's the game this is now. Is can they do enough? Can they hurt Notre Dame enough where they've got to move away from that, or they've got to compensate a little bit over to those guys? And now all of a sudden you've opened up Jeremiah Smith for a big play. And I sort of think in a situation like that, it's, like how much can you change the picture on Will Howard? So it looks like one thing and it is another, and you mix it up enough. So like Will Howard's really questioning what he's looking at and he doesn't know. And then, can the rush get home fast enough where he's not going to have the time to figure it out? I think that's the big thing, because I do think when I look at the way Ryan and Chip are calling it now, I feel like they're in enough of a groove, and Will isn't enough of a groove. And I think Will has played well enough over the last, 3 games where you could say, if you're giving them the answer to the test before the snap, like it might be game over. You know what I mean? So how well can they disguise? How can they change the picture on them? How can they make it look like they're doubling Jeremiah, but really maybe they're, playing shell coverage over all the receivers? There's different ways I think that they can at least affect the quarterback in those situations. And, their ewability to stop the run obviously plays into that too, because the better job they can do in slowing down Trey and Quinshon Judkins, the more long yardage you're going to have, and the more ability you're going to have to get creative and getting to the quarterback too. So I do think that there's going to be a little bit of a chess game there, where the other skill guys, the other 4 eligibles on the field, other than Jeremiah Smith, are so good that you can't just say, okay, like we're going to double Jeremiah Smith or shade over to his side on every single play and just leave our other guys out on islands with everybody else and then pressure. It's just like you said, Chimdy, like it's like almost impossible from a math standpoint to make all of that work.
Yeah, I agree. And then you have the 2 running backs who can also catch the ball at the backfield and get matched up over versus linebackers, get screen passes, take them to the house like Travion Henderson did when he gets in space.
Well, and that's the thing is too, is like I think if you're playing as much man, like you said, Chimdy, are they like if we start, putting 3 guys to one side now are they exposed over in the back? You know what I mean? Like I think obviously we caught Texas in a pretty big way there at the end of the half. Because when Trey caught that ball, I don't know what you guys, I was like, oh my God, he's gone. You know what I mean? Like the minute he caught that ball, I was like, how is there that much space there? And I kept expecting someone come flying in from the side or something, you know, and there was just no one there.
No one, right.
Yeah.
Right.
So I do think, and that's the other thing that's cool about it, like just from our perspective is I think like Ryan and Chip are really on a heater as far as like knowing what to call, when to call it, you know what I mean? Like all of that. Like it seems like they've really been on it with their timing. And when to go to Jeremiah and when not to, and opening up the Oregon game with the throw to G. Scott, like, hey, like here's like the fourth most dangerous guy, or fifth most dangerous guy in the field right now, and he can hurt you too. I think that they've done a really good job of sort of setting things up, and then using the balance of their skill on the field, right? Like the fact that they've got 5 guys who can do something with the ball out there at all times, using the balance of their skill on the field to sort of really affect the mentality and play mind games with the defense.
And you mentioned Will Howard and Notre Dame, and Notre Dame's defense and their players are smart players. Right? We talk about scheme and all that stuff, but sometimes it's how you're connected on defense that really makes you very effective. And they do a good job of really understanding situational football. But you talked about Will Howard, and recently, a guy I watch on TV here and there, Manuel Acho, he talked about the 4 quarterbacks left in the quarterfinals, in the Final Four, and he said Will Howard is the worst of the 4. He didn't have a lot of football specifics behind
and at the time it would have been Ewers, Allar, Will and
Leonard, Riley Leonard,
and Riley Leonard, yeah.
And
now I'm forgetting. Now I'm disrespecting the name.
So, and I see the college football word a lot with scarlet and gray glasses, right? So I try my best to remove the bias and really look at the talent. So I want to, from your perspective, one from an NFL draft perspective or NFL as an NFL prospect. How would you rank those quarterbacks? And then from a college football quarterback, where who cares about the NFL, just getting it done in college and their ability to play in a college game. How would you stack those quarterbacks?
So from a draft perspective, as far as like how high I think they'll get drafted.
Yes.
So Allar's gonna go back to school, but like I think if he had come out, he probably would have been the highest pick to the 4. Just because of raw physical ability. And I think like part of that is, I think what we've seen more recently is like almost like routinely, it's like the guys who make it are the freakish athletes, right?
Yeah.
So obviously Lamar fits in that category. Josh Allen fits in that category. Mahomes fits in that category. Justin Herbert fits in that category. Even Burrow, and I think Burrow, I think Burrow's as good as any of them. And people look at him as if he's like this average athlete. He's not. You know what I mean? Like he's a really big athletic kid who has a live arm. Like so, I do think NFL teams look at it more, I think, now than they did 20 years ago, in saying like we need real physical parameters for you to make it in the league. And I think Allar probably has the most of the 4. And so I think Allar's got a real good shot. The other thing is like, and I don't want to take shots at anybody, Allar doesn't look very well coached to me. Allar looks like a big giraffe out there. To me, like I watch him play, and I'm not a coach, but he sort of looks like he's all over the place still. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
for sure.
Like he throws off balance a lot. He doesn't look in control a ton.
Exactly.
Whenever you got to hold the ball for a period of time, it's like this is not good for Penn State. Like,
doesn't it make you wonder though? Like, if the right guy got a hold of him, like maybe what will become of him? You know what I mean? Like you really, I think NFL coaches are going to look at him and say, like, if I can just get him in my program, like that's a big kid, good athlete, big arm, like tough. I think a lot of people are going to look at him and say, like, I can work with that. And so I think he's got a shot if he has a good year next year to be a first-round pick. I would say the second highest picked of them will be Quinn Ewers. And then I think Will be the third, and I think Riley Leonard will be the fourth. Just because I think Riley Leonard's a really good athlete, but he's just not a good enough passer.
Yeah.
I think Will has really helped himself. Like I think Will may have gone from who knows where he goes on day 3 to now being in like the day 2 conversation, which is a big jump. And as you guys know, like if you're a 6th round pick, you're not guaranteed making a team. You know what I mean? Like you go in the 6th round, there's a chance you get cut out of camp. If you're a 3rd round pick, you're probably going to get a few years. You know what I mean? Like no one's using a 3rd round pick on a guy unless it really doesn't work out.
Yeah, right.
You're generally going to make it. You're generally going to make a team, and most teams are probably going to give their 3rd round picks 2 years before they really look at the idea of cutting them. Yeah. So, especially at that position. So I think Will's really kind of played himself into a spot where it's like, he caps this thing off on Monday the right way and then has a good spring and runs well, because I think he's a good athlete. Like if he goes and runs well, like runs, say 4.6, I could see some team, like look at him. Same way I talked about Allar, where it's like, you know what, like we can work with him. He's got a lot of experience. He's got a lot of game experience. Like, we want to get him in our program and see what we could do with him.
Where do you think Quinn Ewers lands?
So, like, he's interesting because he's just like, there's part of it, like, throwing the ball looks really easy to him. Like you watch him throw. And, one thing I've like sort of been taught by people who know way more than me to look for is like the quarterback who can throw from bad body positions. Like that's what Mahomes is. You know what I mean? That's what Josh Allen, like those guys, you watch them, like they don't need much time and space to throw the ball. Like they can be off balance and throw it. They can get like something on it when they're not, like when their whole body isn't in it. And I think Ewers has that. He has the wrist where it's just like you watch it and it just boom, it comes out and you can see like this kid's special at like actually spinning it. My question is like, how fast is he going to run? Right? Like what sort of athlete is he going to be? Because I know there are some questions about that that NFL teams have.
Yeah.
And then how big is he? Because he looks, even in like the perspective of a college game, I'm like, is he 6'2" or 6 foot and change? Is he 215, 220, or is he 205? You just like look at him, and that's part of the equation too. Because I met the guys I mentioned, like even Burrow, and you guys have been around Joe, right? Like Joe's a big guy. Yeah. Like Joe's brothers were linebackers at Nebraska. Joe's a big guy. So, and he's the smallest of all the guys I mentioned probably. So, I have some questions with Ewers and his size. Riley's a fantastic athlete. Like I almost look at Riley Leonard and I'm like, I wonder what would happen if he played tight end. You know what I mean? Because he's like big, and I don't mean it like in an insulting way, but like you look at him and he's like, it's a good enough athlete where he might be able to pull something like that off. At risk of him coming out and throwing for 400 yards on us, like I don't know. I don't know. Like I don't know if he's a good enough passer to really make to really make it as an NFL quarterback. But I think he'll get drafted and get a shot.
Yeah, he's.
I mean, the tough guy too, right? I mean,
toughest nails.
Tough guy. Yeah, I think he close to 1,000 rushing yards on the season. Probably 1,000 if you don't count the sacks like you do in college. He probably got about 1,000 yards rushing, and I think he had like 16 rushing touchdowns on the season. So he's been doing really well at that standpoint. It's just interesting with Ewers because he was essentially like one of the highest rated guys coming out of high school, right? Like by far, rated higher than these guys. 5-star.
So what's interesting about that though, Bryant? Like, is he? So I like sort of think about like Jimmy Clausen and Matt Barkley, and there are these guys that were superstars in high school, and they were supposed to be like the next big quarterback, and like they all came from like these big time high school programs where like. I mean, how many times do they step on the field and the guys around them were like way better than everybody else?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like way better than everybody else. And so like I'm sort of like I think Quinn's got more talent than those guys. but like he did come from like that sort of background where he came from a big powerhouse program in Dallas, and like kind of was like an early developer. Like, so he was a really good player like when he was young, right? So he was sort of ahead of the curve from a development standpoint. And like just like those guys, like he's not overwhelming physically. You know what I mean? Like, so I do wonder if there's like a little bit of that. Like the Jimmy Clausen, Matt Barkley, like Matt Barkley played at Modern Day and in LA, and Jimmy Clausen played at Oaks Christian and South Lake Carroll in Dallas, like where Quinn went, sort of like that, you know. So I sort of wonder if that's what it is, if that makes sense. You know what I mean?
The other thing with Quinn is it just seems like the game still is moving it fast to him, like the defense.
Right.
On those plays where he knows exactly where he's going pre-snap, like this is, you know, Sark has designed a play. They had the one pass versus Arizona State to end the overtime. Like those passes are pinpoint accuracy, great passes. That's when you see him at his best. Whenever it seems like he really has to figure things out, he struggles to me. And I could see it. I could see the safeties. I could see what's happening. And it just seems like it's hard for him to make that decision. Where a guy like Will Howard, he does a much better job of being able to handle what the defense is giving them. And I wonder how much do the NFL coaches take that into account? Because to me, the most important thing is from a quarterback's position, to me, is that decision making. I played against Peyton Manning when he was on the decline, and some of his balls were coming out. They look like knuckleballs a lot of times.
Yeah.
But I was also as a corner looking and saying, yeah, we're not gonna be able to stop that because it's going in one place where we don't have anybody there. Like this is where the defense is vulnerable, and I could see him processing and making a decision. And no matter how that ball came out of his hands, it's gonna be a complete pass, and I got to go run and make a tackle. So that's one thing that I think Quinn.
Well, he's so far ahead too, right?
Yeah.
Peyton had to be so far ahead of like that point. Like it was like he had to anticipate like everything that was happening out there because he couldn't put it there. He couldn't get the ball there fast enough to just beat the coverage there. So he had to win with his head. I'd be interested to hear your perspective on this then. Like I mentioned Jimmy Clausen and I mentioned I mentioned Matt Barkley, and I wonder if it applies like with a quarterback who's playing on teams that are always superior. Like how often over the course of your football playing life did the play not go the way it was supposed to go? You know what I mean? Like how often did the coach draw something up and it didn't work out the way that you thought it would? How often, like when you're playing in one of those big time high school programs or you are at Texas, like how often is it that the other team's going to have better players than you, they're going to have a better scheme than you, and you have to go 1, 2, 3, 4? You know, how often is that going to happen? Probably not a lot, right? You mentioned Will Howard. It probably happened a bunch when he was at Kansas State.
Right.
And so like he shows up at Ohio State and it's like, oh my God, like most of the plays are working out now the way that they're being drawn up. That probably wasn't. I always think that part of it's interesting with quarterbacks because it's like how much of it, I don't know, like.
Yeah, I think it's a real thing. Even for the very athletic the guys who run a lot, right? It's like I've always been the best athlete on the field.
Yeah,
like, I look at a guy like Miro, who's like always the best athlete on the football field, and whenever things are challenging, he could take off and run for 10 yards. And how much does that hurt their development from going through all the multiple reads and sitting in the pocket? C.J. Stroud used to keep himself in the pocket when he could have got maybe 5 or 6 yards running sometimes and continue to process, and maybe to a fault at sometimes, but at the same time, he developed that ability to really identify what he's looking at and making the right decision.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it's an important thing. I mean, I think because when you get to the NFL, you're not going to have that advantage. You're not going to have the talent advantage. Like, even if you're playing the worst team in the league, they still got dudes on the other side. You know what I mean? Like, so, like, you're not going to have. It's not going to be all that often that you're going to get into a game in the NFL and things are going to go right just the way the coach drew them up. You know what I mean? And they're going to force you to do things they're going to force you into uncomfortable situations. And so, like, I mean, look, Patrick Mahomes went to Texas Tech. Josh Allen went to Wyoming. Probably had to figure stuff out a lot. You know what I mean? Like when they were at those places, they were probably in a lot of situations where it's like, I don't have better players around me than the other team has on the other side. So I am going to have to figure out what they're doing. I am going to have to read this. I am going to have to know it better than they want me to know it. I just think that's a really interesting part of it for sure.
Yeah, for sure. Now, I got a question. This is a little bit, it's not off topic, but it's a silly one. But I seen this a few moments ago that Lou Holtz, Coach Day and Lou Holtz, they got that beef going on, right? Since before our last game against Notre Dame. But Lou Holtz said he's showing. He said he's showing up. He said he's pulling himself together. He's going to show up Monday and be at that national championship game, obviously supporting Notre Dame. What's your thoughts on that, man? Is that going to be
Is Notre Dame going to put him on the sideline?
Yeah, I hope not. If they put him on the sideline, you got to put the team in front of them.
They will know where Lou Holtz is at if that's the case.
I won't have any trouble finding Lou Holtz on Monday.
But do you think stuff like that could be like the trigger, right? That Notre Dame somehow is kind of rally it back up. And
I don't know. I guess.
The world.
Yes, but it's like it's the national championship game. If you can't get up for it, you probably aren't making it there in the first place, right? So I don't know that anybody's going to need any extra motivation, but I'm sure if Notre Dame wins, then they'll say that's exactly what it was. Like, you know what I mean?
Lou on Coach Day.
Yeah.
So I want you to take us through your thought process. Final game of the season, for the fourth time in a row, didn't get it done versus that team up north. What was your thought process at that point and your expectations for this team and for this coaching staff at that moment?
I don't know how honest I can be here.
Well, we want you to be as honest as possible. We want you to be as honest as possible.
Don't worry about that recording.
I have lots of Michigan people in my family. I have a lot of Michigan people in my work world.
Rich Eisen.
Rich is a good friend of mine, and I'm on a text group with him that he doesn't hold back. So yeah, the first thing, I'm sitting there. So you guys know how cold it was that day, and I'm sitting there, and everything had gone like kind of according to plan for me that day. I had to fly in that morning because we had the Black Friday game, so I couldn't get out Friday night in time. So I flew in Saturday morning, which I was worried about that because if my flight gets delayed, I'm screwed because it's a noon game, all that, So everything goes perfect. I get to my buddy's house. We go over to the tailgate. I get myself going there. I'm shot out of a cannon going to the stadium. And, we're sitting kind of in the corner of the end zone, real close. And, my buddy Brady Quinn is down there, basically right next to us. And so I'm thinking I'm going to see a lot of touchdowns scored right there. You know what I mean? And didn't go that way. And I remember about 2 minutes left, and Mullings breaks off that run. And I turn to my buddy, and I don't know if you guys will have to beep this, but I turn to my buddy and I just go, "We're going to lose this fucking game."
That was the sentiment at that point.
Yes. Yeah, right.
That was when it hit me.
It hit you
were
right.
Worried, but that's when it hit you.
Yeah.
And sure enough, we lose the game. Brady Quinn comes over and basically blames me for the loss because he knows I was the last Michigan game in Columbus too. So he says I'm the cooler or whatever. I'm the reason they lost. Then he asks what we do next. I may or may not have said the word Vrabel. And then
so you are a lunatic fringe fan.
I was frustrated.
You were a part of
Ryan's a friend of mine too. But I was frustrated, and Brady can vouch for me that I was the look on my face was not good, and so then we went out and we drank for a little bit longer, and I was just so freaking miserable. And you know what? Honestly, it stuck with me for a few days after that. And then, you think about the playoffs, and I just, I had no idea what to expect against Tennessee. What, were you guys like that too?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I had
Yes.
no idea, like,
Yeah,
because I
yeah,
thought like what did happen, like I thought in the back of my head that could happen, but I had no confidence that it would, if that makes sense. Like I just thought like all things were on the table. You know what I
It
mean?
was
right. Right.
it was
It
a
was
weird situation where it's like I think they can win big. But I
Yeah.
also saw them versus that last team, and I thought they could win big then. So
Yeah, right. It was a situation like, did the team give up? Right, that was a huge loss. Like it was a lot of shame going on, and so a bunch of seniors who really came back to try to beat Michigan. You lose it, like they could be like, well, I'm going off to the NFL. Like I'm done with this, right? And go out
Yeah.
and lay an egg against Tennessee and say I'm done with the season. I'm done with Ohio State, right? I mean, that could have easily happened. And
yeah, we don't know what
mean,
it feels like to lose four in a row against that team. We just don't know what that feels like. But
yeah,
the
and
response was great.
I'll be honest too. Like I was kind of happy about the fight at the end.
oh yeah,
Yes.
oh yeah, oh yeah.
Yes.
I was kind of like, I was like, good, because I was there
Yeah.
when they did it in 22 also. And it kind of made me upset that no one did anything about it. Because
Same.
it was such an eerie feeling watching them run around and plant the flag. Like it was an eerie feeling, like watching that happen and no one doing anything about it. You know what I mean? And just everyone just sort of standing there. And so I've told people, I'm like, it's not okay to fight on the field. I'm like, but if you're going to do that, if you're Michigan, you're going to do that, you better be prepared for it.
Gotta expect a fight.
You got to expect that.
You plant a flag, you got to expect a fight.
Yeah,
because what you're doing, you're openly disrespecting someone.
Yeah,
like that is like that. That's the point of doing it. And I don't want to hear anything about like that. That is why you do it. You know what I mean? You do it to say, you know what? Not only did I beat you, I'm going to shove it in your face. And so I sort of wonder if that was like a turning point for them too. And then I'm sure you guys have heard the story. I think it was I went to, an Ohio State alumni thing at New York City. There are a few guys there. Greg Baldwin's one of them. They do a great job putting alumni events together. I happened to be in the city that weekend with my kids, and so I brought them over to this little dinner thing. And Bobby Carpenter got up and talked. And Bobby, and you guys know Bobby's like the mayor of the program. Bobby's awesome.
Yeah.
And Bobby talked about being around the players and the seniors. And I think they had just had senior tackle, whatever it was. They had just done something. And Bobby was like, all those guys talked about how they had 4 more games together. And he's like, and it wasn't even like, there wasn't even a doubt. You know what I mean? It was just, and we got 4 more games, guys. And we got 4 more games. And we got 4 more games. And this is what there were a lot of people picking Tennessee that week, So that's like one thing that like, I think, if they do win on Monday and we all get to remember this season forever, I'm going to remember hearing that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like I'm going to remember hearing like guys like Jack Sawyer and JT and Emeka and Travion and Denzel Burke and all the guys who stuck around and were so huge to, what the program needed to be at like its darkest moment. You know what I mean? Like that. Like those guys like really believed it could happen and thought it would happen. And not even believed it could happen, like really thought it was going to happen, So, I mean, I can't say that I fully believed it at the time. Cause again, I had no idea what to expect against Tennessee, but obviously it played out like I think I'm speaking for a lot of people here, better than we could have ever imagined.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. Games. And like I would say,
I knew I thought they had another gear. I'm blown away by the way they played, especially against Tennessee and Oregon.
And I would say this, and I've been around some of those seniors, and just this group. This is why the Michigan loss hurt so bad. It's like being around this group, this coaching staff. It just feels like they're approaching everything the right way, and it feels like they have the right mentality, the right mindset. They're just a good group of individuals, and it's just for things to not be able to get that goal for 4 years. That I'm like, man, I'm really hurt for those seniors. But I did know that group of guys, they were going to approach the playoffs the right way as well. So I took comfort in the fact that I know they're doing the right things. I love the fight at the end. I love seeing Jack Sawyer grabbing the flag. I tweeted, Jack, you always gonna be right in my book after that type of effort. And I love seeing Jack Sawyer get the sack fumble and pick it up and run it back for a touchdown. Because
I tweeted a picture like when he ran the sack fumble back, right? Like the strip sack back. I tweeted the picture of him pulling the Michigan flag away. Like,
there you go.
but I did it because I thought like it does relate because it like here's the kid who here's someone who like it really matters to him. You know what I mean? It really, really matters to him, and like you can see it in the way he's played the last 3 games.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I want to ask you about Coach Day. All right, right. Obviously, it's one thing Coach Day can't figure out. Right, we all know what that is. But other than that, the teams tend to, follow his lead and play well, and especially really when his back against the wall. Right after the Hughes lost to the team of North, to come out and kind of have these inspired performances over the last 3 games, leading to this national championship. What's your thoughts on Coach Day? And obviously, somewhere it's far off rumors, but Coach Day and him being Ohio State, him being a Buckeye, and to be frank, possibly winning a national championship and taking his talents to the next level to the NFL. Because you got to imagine, there's plenty of teams that would have him, right?
Yeah. I mean, I think it's 2 separate questions. Like with Ryan, I think Ryan's an excellent coach, and I think I tend to like look at him as both a player and a person and a coach here, because as a coach he's really good. As a person, I think he's better, and I think you can see it in like his players and how they've all taken up for him. You know what I mean? Like I think like for them, and I don't know, you guys are around them, so you can answer this, but it feels like it's meaningful for them to go on this run because they know what it means for Ryan. You know what I mean? Like they know, and it's not like they don't want to do it for themselves or each other. That's obviously the first thing, but it does seem like when you watch the way they interact with Ryan, that it really matters to them that they're doing this for him too, because they know the way that people have talked about their coach over the last month and a half, and they want to show that they have his back, which I think really reflects on the difference he's made for all of those guys. And I think you can see like what sort of offensive coach he is. The job he's done with quarterbacks, is really obvious. I think, it's easy to look at it and take it for granted now, but Ohio State didn't have quarterbacks like Dwayne Haskins and Justin Fields and CJ Stroud and, before, so like the bar's really high, but he helped put it there. Like he helped put the bar there. So I think he's got a lot of the qualities that NFL teams are looking for. I really think he likes it in Columbus, outside of maybe, I'd say like that little percentage of the population. I think he does like it in Columbus too. Like I do think he likes living there, and he's got I think his son's in high school now, right? Like and a good player. So I'd imagine he'll probably be around for a couple of years. But I also think he's got I think he's got a future in the NFL. And I think if they keep playing this way, then people are going to come and knock on the door. And I do think with the demands of college football now, there are a lot of people in the college game that would like to go to the NFL. Like, how long is Sark at Texas? Lincoln Riley, how long is he at USC? I think there's a lot that goes into running a college program now that's all encompassing. And, I think for a lot of guys, there's that feeling like, I just want to go coach football again. You know what I mean? Like that's why Chip's at Ohio State, because I've talked to Chip about this. Like he just wanted to go coach football, Cliff, like great example, Cliff Kingsbury, like, he went back to college for a year. He probably could have been a head coach different places. He wanted to go, I want to go coach and run it on. I want to go coach quarterbacks and run an offense. And he went to Washington. I think Cliff would tell you now, like that this year has sort of rekindled his love for football because he gets to go coach a kid like Jaden Daniels is outstanding. And, really like his job, just focus on football. So like, I think that day will eventually come for Ryan. I don't think it's today, but I think that day will eventually come for Ryan. And I think NFL teams should have an interest in him.
It'll be a sad day for Buckeye Nation, that's for sure.
Yeah. You don't know what you have until it's gone, right?
You're right. That's right. Yeah. That's right.
You mentioned one of your friends is Brady. So Have you guys been talking recently about
I'm on
this
the radio
upcoming
with
game?
him tomorrow morning, so we'll see what happens
Okay.
tomorrow. I mean, the radio show I'm on with him, LeVar Arrington's also on,
Okay.
and so
Yeah.
like when we did last week, it was that game hadn't been played yet, so I'm interested to see the change in LeVar's tone this week, like how maybe he's. And hopefully we see the same change in Brady's tone from this week to next week that we see in Lamar's from last week to this week.
That's right.
I think we'll figure out something. We'll have something going. Brady's a great dude. Brady, Brady's back there in Ohio now. So
Okay.
he's he's done a fantastic job in the media. I really I've enjoyed working with him in a bunch of different capacities over the last few years. I really hope he has a horrible Monday. Like
That's right.
I'm really hoping January 20th goes really bad for him.
Right. I know he already got some special hate in his heart for Ohio State, due to some previous matchups for his time at Notre Dame. And I hope that continue, like you say, on Monday. And, just all in all, let it keep brewing for the years to come.
One other thing, for the second year in a row, you have two teams not from the SEC matching up in the national championship. This year, two Midwest teams.
Yep.
I like Kirk Herbstreit, but I continue even without any response. But I'm continue on Twitter to hold him accountable for his speech he gave after the Notre Dame Indiana game about how some teams don't belong in this game, and some teams got left out. We assume he was talking about SEC teams. Maybe he was talking about BYU. I don't think so. But what do you think? Because of the changing landscape in college, there's a ton of talent in the South. I grew up in the South. I came up to Ohio State. If Ohio State would have offered me money to come up here, I definitely would have even considered anybody else to come. And I can't. So do you think NIL, transfer portal, the fact that certain teams can't stack that talent for many years like before, do you think the SEC reign over college football is over?
You mean now that paying isn't cheating anymore?
Right. Now that paying isn't cheating. Now that everybody can pay.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting. I mean, I think it does like level the playing field to some degree. And I think, I think it puts an emphasis on who's evaluating, and who is doing the best job of pulling every lever. The one thing like you hear from, from NFL coaches is that they feel like they're equipped to coach in college now. And you see this with Belichick at North Carolina, where it's really sort of moved to an NFL model where, you have free agency, that's the transfer portal. And then obviously the equivalent of the draft would be, high school recruiting. And there are just more levers to pull to fill out your roster, And so the best teams, it's like really hard to be as deep as you were before. And you're going to lose kids, like if they're not playing. Like it's going to be hard to have. It's much harder to have the kid who you developed in your program for 3 years and he gets in the field in year 4. Like that kid's probably not going to stay all 4 years anymore.
Right.
So, like, what sort of job do you do evaluating and bringing in the right kids and plucking the right kids from different programs? I think it does like level the playing field. And I think you'll see that over time. Like, I think you'll see that over the time, like with teams that do the best job of setting up like a real scouting department, and figuring out like, hey, here's the offensive tackle that we need to go get out of San Diego State, or here's the defensive end at, Marshall, who is a stud and probably is like a second round pick, but we can sell him on coming here and being a first round pick. Like there's so many different avenues to building your roster where I think like, at Chimney, you can certainly give this more context. Like, the reality is like the deepest well of talent's always been in the Southeast. You know what I mean? Like, and for a long time, like, Georgia, Florida, Tennessee now is really good, right? Louisiana, like there's so much talent concentrated in that area. So like before, when it was so much of it was just about high school recruiting, like of course a lot of the best programs are going to be in the Southeast. But now, if you can't hold on to all of that talent for all 4 years, all 5 years, you have to work harder to replenish that talent. And for everybody everywhere else that's not in that area of the country, like there are different avenues now to getting that talent. You may be able to get that kid from Louisiana now, and not only you get him after he's been in an SEC program for 2 years. You know what I mean? Now you're pulling him out of that program, and now he's a starter for you. Maybe he wasn't a starter down there, but he's going to be a starter for you, and that's going to pull you closer to them. You know, so I think I do think that to some degree it kind of levels the playing field a little bit, like in that, like there's just more avenues to improve your roster, you know? And I do think to some degree, like those who approach it like an NFL team would, where, you know, again, in the NFL, you get your pro scouting department, which is free agency, trades, all that stuff. You get your college scouting department, which is the draft. The teams that are programs that go in and set it up that way, like here's our portal director, here's our high school recruiting director. Like these guys, their jobs are just to go evaluate and go find the best kids. Teams that do a good job of that, I think, are going to really thrive in the new era.
Bill Belichick, North Carolina. That's going to be. It's gonna be fun to watch that.
It's already fun. It's already funny to watch, but it's gonna be fun to watch too.
Well, I mean, just the pictures of him at like barbecue joints on the side of the road, and like standing there, like taking a picture with a high school coach. It's like it's so bizarre.
I want to see him on Twitter. I want to see him with like a grill in his mouth and a chain on. With, high school recruit
doing the Brian Kelly video.
With the spinning camera, right. Yeah, throwing them signals. Yeah, that's right. Yeah. All right, before you go, I know you got some 2K to get into tonight, Albert, but before you go, just real quick, got to get your prediction. What's your score prediction come Monday?
You don't want me to jinx it.
No, we need it. We just need it.
Yeah,
we just got a little.
So how do I pick them but not jinx it? Like, do I have to say like 22-21? So then, like,
you could give score. You could give range of like how many points.
Yeah, you know how to do this. You got it.
I think if it's close, it's going to be something like so. Like, let's just say it's close, so we're not jinxing anything. I think if it's close, it'll be played in like the high 20s. So I'd say like 27-24, Ohio State, maybe something like that.
Okay.
Have you guys made your picks yet, or is that for a show later?
No, we made our picks. Yeah. I went. Let's say I went 30-13 because I'm just a bold guy like that. 30-13.
Yeah.
I almost hit the. What score was that?
Lose.
Yeah. No. Yeah. I almost hit one score on the head. What game was that? Oregon. I almost hit Oregon on the head.
Yeah.
I gave I was right there on it. Almost hit that.
I was close.
Head,
so. I was kind of close.
I said I picked first.
Yeah, we both basically picked double digit win.
Double digit win.
It's just hard for me if Ohio State brings their best game and they don't shoot themselves in the foot with penalties, which they kind of did versus Texas.
They did last game. Yeah.
It's hard for me to not see a 10-point victory, even if it's a tough game. Like even if it's one of those tough games. I still see it as a 2-score game.
I will say, like, I think Texas was a pretty significant hurdle. Like, I think Texas is good. Like, I think, you know, I remember I was nervous before the 15 Michigan game, and Michigan had played really well, and we just like laid the egg against Michigan State, right? And I remember like thinking like, and Michigan was really kind of getting going under Harbaugh and all that, and I had an NFL scout who was there text me, and he goes, "You have nothing to worry about." And I'm like, "What do you mean?" He's like, "These teams look completely different. You have nothing to worry about." And I think like, yeah, you guys know what I mean. Like the scout walks on the field and they're body typing everybody, right? Like so they're looking at how tall is this guy? How long is he? Where are his arms? Like what's his build? How much weight can he carry? So it's like, you guys have nothing. You have nothing to worry about. And, I always think about that when I think about some of these matchups at the college level. And I think Texas is probably the team that looks like us of the ones we've played. You know what I mean? Like maybe Oregon too, but I think Texas is the one that really looks like us, you know? Yeah. And I'm not sure there are that many of them in the bracket, if that makes sense. No offense to anybody else. But
no, but I completely agree. Yeah, 100%. 100%. So yeah, I know you got some 2K. Like I said, I know you got to get the fingers going. So we're gonna go ahead and let you.
And credit to him, he didn't come in here. I thought he was going to come in here whining at some point.
He should have came on. He should have wrapped this thing up.
Yeah, wrap this up. It's time to go. Well, Albert, we really appreciate it. Obviously, follow Albert on Twitter. He's big on Twitter. Also, the Monday Morning Quarterback, senior writer for Sports Illustrated, insider for Amazon NFL. We appreciate your time, your wit, your thought of getting ready here to gear up for this national championship game. Really appreciate it. Chum, anything else here? You good?
Yeah, finish with the OHIO.
You got to finish with the OH. You ready? All right, OH.
IO.
Go Bucks. Go Bucks.
Bucks.
Talk to you guys soon.